According to the OECD, total resource flows to developing countries, aid as it's called, between 1982 and 1990 was about $927 billion. The West is often celebrating how much money it provides in the form of aid to Africa and developing countries. However, what's often forgotten is that developing countries also remit wealth back to the North. To understand that, in the same period, between 1982 and 1990, developing countries remitted, just in debt servicing alone, $1,345 billion. Okay, to understand that figure, this is equivalent to us providing North America with the equivalent of 2 Marshall Plans every 3 years in today's terms. A more recent report prepared by Christian Aid, a group at Christian Aid, wrote, developing countries have become the net capital providers to rich countries, not the other way around. Cumulatively, this amounted to $2,577 billion in the period 2002 to 2007. Add to this the volume of capital flight, especially illicit capital, from developing countries, estimated about $150 to $250 billion, and the scale of the reverse aid is staggering. If we are poor, it is because you are rich. That's the essence of it, because it is our wealth which is going north. The question is, how did this come about? In the 50s, there was an extraordinary phenomenon which led to a massive rise of popular movements across the continent. These movements aspired towards some kind of emancipation, some kind of freedom from colonial rule. South Africa's experience happened somewhat later, but it had the same element: mass movements who sought to have to determine their own future. And yet it was these same mass movements which were betrayed by the intervention of the US governments into the political arena, into organizing coups against governments which they didn't like, organizing assassinations against those who they characterize as at that time, communists. Today, we would be called terrorists. The problem is that the US, with all its cries for democratic freedoms, etc., is unable to tolerate that kind of extension of freedoms to people in Africa. In Angola, in Mozambique, as in Colombia, the US governments have systematically poured money into so-called counterinsurgency groups to defeat the movements for liberation. An investigation into Congressional Research Service showed that in 2003, that US, Britain, France, Germany, Russia, all G8 members, were responsible for 89% of arms sales to Africa. It is from here that the sources of violence in Africa has coming. What has happened over the last few decades has been that development, so-called, has become a game. It's become a game about who has access to what. And civil war is merely an extension of that behavior, albeit by more violent means. What concerns me, especially in relation to the debates that took place these last couple of days, is that we're living in a period where there's enormous hope. There is a possibility that Barack Obama might be your next president. I remember the same level of hope arising when Clinton was first elected. And yet, Rwanda, the Clinton administration was fully cognizant of what was about to be unleashed when well over 800,000 people were massacred in the space of 2 or 3 months. The Clinton administration actively prevented any international intervention to prevent that genocide. The Clinton administration prohibited, vetoed any move for that. So what are the guarantees, I would ask you, that the new Democrat regime coming into Washington is going to be any different? And it's not a question of whether Obama is a nice person or not. He is a Kenyan, and I've lived through 3 Kenyan presidents, so I'm not sure I'm in a position to recommend one to you. Nevertheless, what he has, I feel, given rise to is an immense hope. It's not his policies that are that different from the rest of the cabal, but it is the hope that I think he inspires in everyone, not least to us in Africa, okay, that this time things could be different. But I would suggest that they will not be different unless we actively work today to forge alliances between this most extraordinary rise of social movements across Africa. If we can connect them with your aspirations, with the aspirations of the progressive movement and the beginnings and emergence of, or re-emergence of social movements in the US. I think for us, the first hand that we will reach out, and those of you who know Pambasuka News will know that we've extended our hand in saying, as Pan-Africanists, those who have a historical connection with our continent are part of our struggle, and that their struggle is ours. And it is that connection that will transform or limit the possibilities of a new regime in Washington from behaving like what others, other Democratic and Republican regimes have done. If we are poor because you are rich, your freedoms should not be, if they're true freedoms, at our expense. Thank you.